Welcome to another video for creating Spring Boot application start from scratch. On this video, I'll be using Java 17 and Spring Boot 2.6. Please subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Okay, on this video, Java 17, Spring Boot 2.6, start from scratch. I'm going to show you what is the current version I do have it. It is Java minus version 15.0.2. That is the current version I do have it on my machine. But for this demo, I'm going to, as I mentioned, that we're going to install Java 17. Okay, so let's look a little more details. So I'm going to install JDK 17 or install or configure JDK 17 and then install Eclipse and then creating a Spring Boot project and run the application. This is what mostly I will be explaining on this video. And also, like, in between, microservices architecture is something you can look at it to understand what is microservices and why Spring Boot is so popular to create the Spring Boot microservice architecture, right? So to begin with, I'm going to minimize all those things for now, just to. Okay, now let's. So this is Spring Boot documentation, but let's go to the Java 17 first. So this is the Open JDK. I'm going to use it. Okay, this is a development kit, but yeah. This is not the URL looks like, but no, this is not the place I need to go. But let's go to the JDK 17, and you'll be seeing. I'll post this link on the descriptions for you easily to access it. But this is the documentation, or this is the page where you can download this. Download this, and also meanwhile, I'm going to install Eclipse. Start from scratch. I'm going to install the latest version of Eclipse. So this is the link. You need to click on it, and this is the last month version. I'm going to download the Eclipse installer, right? So now if I look at that, I installed JDK on the machine, and I'm going to extract that, and then okay, so I did a mistake actually. When I was downloading that Mac OS version, I did download the wrong Mac OS versions. You should be downloading 64 or whatever the version currently you have it. You need to make sure that you're installing the right version of the Mac OS tar.js file for Java version, right? So initially I downloaded the wrong one, so I'm just going to extract that and go to the library folder on your local machine. Then you can see Java and then Java virtual machine, and then you can copy whatever the file you extracted it to the folder. So this will ask you to authenticate it. This is nothing but your machine password or the sudo password. Once you configure that, just going to quit the item for a second and going to reopen that item one more time, right? Increase the font a little bit. So Java version is 1.8, right? I do have a method on my bash file, so I do have a separate complete video how to switch from Java 8 to another versions, right? So there is a small script up here on the description, you can see it. Follow these lines. This is a 4-minute video. You should be able to configure exactly what I have it. Let me just show you what I have it on my bash profile. So I do have export Java home, and also I do have this method up here. So default it always set to 1.8, but also I have an features where I can change that versions pretty fast. Let me just run the method set JDK. So set currently it's Java version 1.8, right? So I'm going to change this to set JDK space 13. So now I do the version 13, and then I'm going to change to 15 and then see the Java version is 15. Now I'm going to change to 17 and see version is 17, right? So all you need to have is you need to have correctly extracted the JDK folders in your Java folders. Make sure that you have the right versions over here. If you don't have these versions up here and you're looking to set the JDK switch, then it won't work, right? So now we know that we completely configured JDK on your local machine successfully. Now I'm going to install the Eclipse on it. We did download the Eclipse installer. It's a DMG folder, DMG file. So you open up that and double click on it. That will open up an installer on your machine. And okay, it's coming up. Let's give it a second. Okay, so once you open up once you open up that, I'm going to use the Eclipse IDE for enterprise and Java web developers. This is the version I'm going to use it. So in case if you have there is a different Eclipse packages, but I'm going to use IDE for enterprise Java and web developers. Okay, so in here you will see what is the versions you want to select it. Default it was selected 15, but I'm going to, for this demo, I mentioned that I'm going to use 17 on it. So let's use the 17 on it. I'm going to install it. This takes maybe few seconds. In between, make sure that you have a couple of pop-up windows comes up here. Just keep accepting it and then just keep goes. Right. Meanwhile, let's go to the Spring Boot documentation. Okay, installing. Let's keep it on the side. And then this is the documentation, and there's documentation for 2.6.2. So by the time it install it, I think it's something's happening. But let's give it in a few seconds. Make sure that sometimes it will come up and some alert to install, accept some more licenses. In case if that comes in, it's fine. But now let's go to the Spring Boot Initializr. So this is another application or another UI thing you'll get it from Spring Boot, which will helps you to create a default jar file or default source code. I'll call it as default or maybe template, right? So for this project, I'm going to use the Maven version. If you are using a Gradle, you can select the Gradle up here, and then there is a currently the Spring Boot version is 2.6.2. Everything else is a snapshot. I'm going to use the group ID is that's a package. I'm going to put a commas, and then you can just put your company your company name, and then that's a package you're going to do it. Artifact ID, I'm going to say Spring Boot training, or maybe just put a Spring Boot example. That's much better, I think. You can put a description, package name. Package name, if you want, you can change it. I'm going to select it as a Java jar file, and then version is 17, right? Now there is a right side, you can add a dependency. You need to have a default couple of dependencies to run the application. One is the not the boot, so I forgot it. Okay, it's actuator, right? You need to add an actuator. I will show you what is advantages of actuator, and then I'm going to add a Spring Boot web. Yep, Spring Web. Add that, and then you can do generate button on the bottom that will just download the zip file. Let's do it. Okay, now let's go back to the Eclipse and see that there is a import project, so you can do it. If you already have because we have a Maven project, but in case if you are using a Gradle, you can search here as a Gradle and then do it. But just realize that we didn't extract the zip file, right? Yeah. So if it's a Maven, you'll do Maven. If it's a Gradle, you can search by Gradle. But for this demo, I mentioned that we are using Maven, right? Browse. Oh, you know what? I think I missed to extract that source code. Let's do the source code extraction, and then copy this to my training workspace. Right? Copy this, Where is the copy? Oh, yeah, copy. Then go to my training and then do a paste, and then I'll do browse, then Spring Boot example, select that, finish. This imported my project to my Eclipse workspace, and sometimes it may take like a few seconds, but you can see the main Java, everything is in this folder, which is going to be in the source code, and then you'll see a test folder, resource folder, and the resource folder will have an application.properties. This is where bunch of other configurations you need to add it. So in case default it's going to be run on 8080, but if you want to add like 8081 or different port number application properties, but this is for the JUnits. And then there's a pom.xml. This is a Maven configurations, which will have like Spring Boot starter, that is an artifact ID, and then version, and then you have a version of your application. This 0.01 snapshot is your application version or your artifact version. You're using 17, and some of the dependencies you added is actuator and verb. This the font a little bit. Okay, and there is a JUnit or the test suite which has a scope of test. There's a Maven plugin. Now if you go up here and you can see a Java application, right? So you can right click and then do a run as Java application, or you can run it from the menu over there. So maybe you will already have it over here. If you don't have it, let me just double click on it. It will come up here, and then in case if you have any VM arguments, you can add it up here, right? Main, and then you can click on run. So I'm going to run it right now. It says that the application is started. Now let's we can go to the browser and then hit the localhost 80. Nothing comes up, which we know that because we doesn't have any mapping to that, but this is where actuator helps us. So you do click on actuator. That's the default one, SCTR. Okay, you'll see it up here, actuator, and then so in case if you actuator and then health and the path. In case if you don't see this JSON nicely formatted, you can install a JSON Chrome formatter plugin. I recommend this one, which will be like once you install this one, it will be like the JSON response is going to be more readable, right? You can see the status of the actuator, health of the application is up. Now I would go back and then create a I terminated the application right now. Now I'm going to we can go back and look at maybe create some new package, and the new package I'm going to create a controller method, controller package, and then we're just going to refresh it, but you'll see that there is a controller. I'm going to create it right now. Put it as in a very hello controller, right? Hello controller, then just implement the comments. Yeah, right. So you can do this needs to have an annotation. It's called as REST controller. That means this controller is a REST controller, right? I'm going to once you have that, you can create a public method. I'm going to just create an index, right? So it's very basic, and then it needs to return a string, right? I'm just going to say that get. So you know that HTTP method has get, post, put, patch, everything. You can see it. For now I'm going to default map to an index method, and then just return maybe some welcome to Spring Boot. This is a very basic things, but I'm going to go a little detail JSON response in a second. Hang on there, and then I'm going to restart this. Yep, it says welcome to Spring Boot. Now I did have a default mapping for the default local host or the domain URL, right? Now Now next things what we have to do is we have to create an actual REST API controller, right? So I'm going to create another uh, package called, maybe like, don't not use domain, but let's do the DTO. DTO is like a data transfer object. Right click, and then I'm going to create a very basic class. It's called as the user DTO. I'm going to create a couple of properties on this this DTO. Username, and then maybe I'll just put last name, first name, and then maybe last name. Right, and I'm going to just generate some getter and setter methods for this one. This is sorry, refactor, and then generate getter and setter methods. In case if you don't know, you can right click inside that, and then you can create a getter and setter methods, right? So now I do have a getter and setter methods, and that will be just basically, and instead of string we are going to use that one. But I would say that why don't we create a new controller class. It's called as user controller. You need to make that as a REST controller, and then say public, public method. Here you will say user DTO, then say get user data. You know what, I think I'll say get mapping, say users. You know what, let me change that method signature slightly a little bit. I'm just going to change this as a list of user DTO, because I gave users as the request API URLs, right? In case if you don't know what is the REST patterns, I would recommend you to read some REST patterns saying that what is the difference between users and user, right? I'm going to see an array list, and I'm going to create a user object. You know what, oh, that's my bad. No, I think let's create a user object. Oh, you know what, I think I did a mistake up here. What was that? Oh, you know what, oh, it's a wrong class. I imported it's supposed to be user DTO, sorry. First name, I'm just put like some names up here. Put that as a last name, D, and then user one dot set username. Just put like okay. Sorry, that has to be a string. And then I will add this object to user list, and this, and then return the user list. The Spring will default, it will convert this back to the JSON format. I'm going to run this application. Usage, you will see everything up here. I'm just going to go to add like a few more objects to the list with a different name. Maybe I'll do like a couple more. Let's do one more. It's 3. Okay, and then now we can see everything is coming up on the response as a JSON. So REST API URL is users, and then it will come back everything as in here. Instead of you hard coding this value is supposed to come from your database. So from the controller you call the database to get the list of users. And now let's create one more method on it. So I'll just copy this as it is. Then I'll say remove that user. I'm just going to fetch a single user data. That's a whole concept. I'm going to do it right now. I will say user user ID, right? Then I'm going to introduce something called path variable. Path variable is user ID that should be matched with whatever the name you have it on the here. Okay, now let's change the username, because I realized that we don't have user ID on it, right? Then instead of this one I will remove that to get, right? I'm just okay, let me just terminate this. Um, something is a little weird up here. Why it's showing some red marks? Okay, anyway, let's put the rest of the code. I'll just going to say I need to return a user DTO, so I'm going to create a user DTO right now. Say user DTO, new user DTO, and that's strange. Why something is wrong up here. Open that one more time. You know what? Nah, that's not right. But why it's acting weird? Couple of errors. You know what? I think the syntax could be wrong somewhere. I'm just trying to see if it's correct. Okay, so something is wrong with that method what I wrote. Let's see what is wrong. Oh, you know what? There's a syntax error up here. It needs to be yeah, okay. Sorry, I think it was my bad. I think you need to have a username up here. That's the syntax it has to be. Now this username and this username should match, and this is what it is been assigned to in Java. So in Java you need to use the one after the string username. I'm just going to put some system log statement here, and to print whatever it comes to the URL. So now let's quickly run it. Uses, let's say user slash, just put some name. The name should be come up in that. So now it comes as in null objects, because we send it as an empty object. But if you look at the console, you'll see that the username has been printed with Webin2. That means whatever the parameter or path variable comes through the URL, it is actually getting into the controller and printing it. So there's two methods. Both methods you need to have it needs to connect to the database, or it calls the database, and then it calls the database, and then execute a query, and then get the values back to the controller, and then controller will return that back to um, the um, the console, the browser basically, right? So example, the user Webin is coming at, then it needs to pass to a controller method, and then you need to write that into into the control method, or it needs to respond, it needs to provide us a response, right? Right. Okay, on this module, I will be talking about Spring Profiles. Spring Profiles is something which used on your application or Spring Boot application to specify environment specific values. And you need to keep in mind that you can have a multiple Spring Profiles in your application. Example, dev is a one Spring profile, and int or production is another profile, and then you can by passing some arguments you can switch the profile whenever you need it, right? Okay, and you need to keep in mind that this configuration is going to be in YAML file. Okay, let's create profile. So I'll go, okay, the profile informations or YAML file has to be on src main resource folder. So I'm going to create a new one. So click on file and then say application.yml. So we do have a YAML file is created right now. You can see it has to be on src main resource. And now the way it needs to do spring colon double quotes config double quotes activate on profile dev. Okay, and I'm going to put some sample values up here. Let's see, you need to have some configuration for or some environment variables called maybe AWS, and then maybe region. You will say US EST 1 maybe. I'll just put some, I'm not sure whether that's correct, but just make it as in AWS region US East 1 for a dev profile, right? I'm going to create one more profiles. The profiles will be with int and 2. So what this means, like when your application runs with the profile is dev, it needs to use the value US East 1 on your application, and if it runs with the int, it needs to use it in a region is EST US East 1. Also, like maybe you will have some API key. I'll just put some API, maybe some specific key, right? So maybe this key will be like 3/4 this, and then maybe on your int environment it could be starting with maybe 111. Okay, so this would be the API key for dev. It would be, this is the key, and then maybe this is the key for int. So and when you run it, so basically you need to specify this -d spring profiles active s2. Not sure whether I know whether this we can I will make sure I copy it here. So it's it says -d spring dot profiles dot active is equal to int. So which, when you say that int, it will be using an int profile. If it's a dev, let's start with dev, right? I'm going to start it right now, but I'm going to let's okay, never mind, sorry. Let's start with dev. So when you start your application, you can see in your console say that the following profiles are active dev. Okay, so if you're seeing what is the profile, then this is the way when you're running your application which profiles or which configuration has been used while in your applications. Now I'm going to run another one, so that will say int. If I say int, it will say, it will restart the applications with the profile is int. That means when you pass an int parameter, that will be run with the int profile on it. So now I'm going to show you how to use this on your application, right? So let's go back to our controller. I'm just going to use the hello controller for now, okay? And I want to use the private string. Maybe I'll just put API key, right? I want the API key. So there is an annotation called value, okay? Inside the bracket, you need to say $, and then you need to, if you are using the API key, you need to say API.key. API.key, that's API key. So now I will I'll just print this with API key, right? So now I'm going to run the application with dev profile, and then let's okay, I think it's already running it. Just give me a second. I will just kill the services. Sorry, it was already running it. Just need to some errors upon it on this. Okay, I'm rerunning this. Okay, so right now you know that I already show you that the profiles are active is dev. That means this is the value it should be used on your application, right? So now I'm going to localhost 8080. See that it's using that value from this controller, right? Now I'm going to switch. I'm going to use a different profile, which is int. Okay, so the profiles are active is int. So now if I hit the same URL again, I will be expecting this second value because I'm using an int profile, right? So this is the way the profile works. So basically you can specify application YAML file with multiple profiles on it, and also in case if it doesn't have to be, you can also specify different files. What does that mean is sometimes I notice that people do it like application cert or dev.yaml file that will have only the configuration for that particular file. That is also possible. So you can have multiple YAML files with the different configurations. That is also possible. So this is the way you do the Spring profiles, and you can of course read more on you can read more details in the Spring Boot features, Spring profiles, and sometimes you need to use a specific profile on your application. It doesn't matter whatever that do. So example you can say set profile production. So in our case we don't have production profile, but what I'm saying is this will be int. So what is this means, even though you pass it on your application arguments, but this will be overriding it, right? Okay, or you can do like that. So mostly this is something which we use it on the test files, like example if you have a specific test profiles, and then if you want to just load only the test profiles up here, that's where mostly we will do it. And of course sometimes in an application also you get to use that whenever there is a requirement. Just keep in mind that it's possible. Okay, that's all about the Spring profiles, and then of course you can read more documentation on the Spring profiles, Spring profile documentation, and I hope this is clear for you. Please subscribe my channel if you haven't already, and thanks for watching this video. I will be posting more videos about Spring Boot soon.